Welcome to Cardboard Content, where we aim to develop our skills and grow the competitive Commander community. Hey guys, thank you for joining me on another week here. We just finished our beta Timetwister tournament. Thank you to everyone who showed up. We had people come from all over the place. We had people come from California. We had people come from, I think, Utah and Arizona. Thank you to everyone who supported me by purchasing some of my tokens. Thank you also to everyone at Darkside who let me film the event. Our first round is right here. Player 1, to our lower right hand corner, Rodrigo on Obnix-Rogsi, Captive Kingpin. Starting hand 7. I'm next on the lower left, playing Rograkh, opening hand of 5. Then we have Dean on Tergrid, starting hand 7, and then Kale on Kinnan, starting hand of 5 also. I have a pregame with a Gemstone Mine, pitching a Last Chance. Rodrigo starts us off with a Luxury Suite into a Sensei's Divining Top. Passes to me. I play Badland. My commander Rograkh casts Paradise Mantle, then casts Imperial Seal. I pass to Dean. Dean plays a Sigil Death Storehouse. Dean casts Vampiric Tutor, and then passes to Kale. Kale plays a Polluted Delta, and then passes turn to Rodrigo. Rodrigo plays Swamp, Dark Ritual, into a turn 2 Obnix-Rogsi. On my turn, I cast Rhystic Study, and then pass the turn to Dean. Dean plays a Swamp, casts Jeweled Lotus, triggers my Rhystic Study, another turn 2 Commander, and triggers my Rhystic Study. In response to Tergrid entering the battlefield, Kale sacrifices his Polluted Delta, triggers Obnix-Rogsi, and Rodrigo exiles an Invasion of Asgol. Kale puts a Hedge Maze into play and keeps the Surveilled card on top. Tergrid resolves, and then Dean passes turn to Kale. Kale casts Birds of Paradise, triggers my Rhystic Study, I draw. On Rodrigo's turn, he plays Mana Confluence, then casts Imperial Recruiter, triggering my Rhystic Study. I draw, and then Rodrigo tutors up a Orcish Bowmaster. Then moves into combat and attacks me with Ob. Then he passes turn to me. I bring out my second commander, Silas Wren, then casts Mystic Remora. On Dean's turn, he plays Swamp, then casts Arcane Signet, triggering my Rhystic Study and my Mystic Remora. I draw 2. Then he casts Dark Confidant, triggers my Rhystic Study, I draw another. Then he moves into combat and attacks Rodrigo with Tergrid. On Kale's turn, he casts his commander, Kinnan, and triggers my Rhystic Study, I draw. We move on to Rodrigo's turn. He plays Forbidden Orchard, then cast Orcish Bowmaster, triggering my Rhystic Study. I draw. With the ETB, he targets my commander, Rograkh, then moves into combat and attacks me again with Ob. On my turn, I pay for Mystic Remora, then play Watery Grave, then cast Lion's Eye Diamond, then cast Cabal Ritual, then cast Snap, targeting Tergrid. Then I cast Besiege the Mirror, bargaining off my Paradise Mantle. Kale responds with a Fierce Guardianship, triggers Rhystic and Mystic, I draw 2. Bowmaster triggers, I get pinged twice, and Obnix-Rogsi triggers twice. Rodrigo gets a Soul Ring and a Disciple of the Vault. I respond back with a Force of Will, triggering Obnix-Rogsi, and Rodrigo exiles Prosper Tombbound. Then Rodrigo responds with Pyroblast, targeting Force of Will, triggers my Rhystic and Mystic, I draw 2, Orcish Bowmaster pings me twice, and Rodrigo exiles with Ob a Dismember and a Twin Flame. Pyroblast resolves, counters my Force of Will, and Fierce Guardianship resolves, countering my Besiege. I pass the turn to Dean. On Dean's turn, his Dark Confidant reveals a Swamp, he takes 0, then casts Crick, Son of Yawgmoth, triggers my Rhystic Study, I draw again, Orcish Bowmaster pings me again, and Obnix-Rogsi triggers, and Rodrigo gets a Blood Crypt. Dean passes to Kale. On Kale's turn, he casts Copy Artifact, triggering Rhystic and Mystic. Orcish Bowmaster triggers, pings me again, and Rodrigo gets Grape Shot and a Simian Spirit Guide, the artifact, targeting Arcane Signet. Then Kale casts his own Arcane Signet, triggers Rhystic and Mystic again. Orcish Bowmaster triggers Resolve, and they ping me again, and Rodrigo gets a Demonic Tutor and a Mox Opal. Then Kale casts Talisman of Curiosity, triggers Rhystic and Mystic again, which triggers the Bowmaster again, and pings me again, and he gets a Mount Doom and a Homeward Path. Kale passes to Rodrigo. On Rodrigo's turn, he plays Soul Ring, triggers Rhystic and Mystic, which triggers the Orcish Bowmaster. This time Rodrigo sends the 2 at Kinnan. Kale responds by tapping his Talisman, pinging himself for 1, and netting 2 blue mana. Obnix-Rogsi triggers, and Rodrigo exiles Birgi. Then Rodrigo casts Mox Opal, triggers Rhystic and Mystic. I respond to these last 2 draws by exiling a Simian Spirit Guide and discarding my hand and getting 3 blue mana with my Lion's Eye, hoping to draw a bounce spell or interaction to save my life. The last 2 draws resolve. Unfortunately, I don't draw anything. Rodrigo moves into combat and swings lethal at me and 12 at Kale. He casts Prosper, then he casts Twin Flame, targeting Imperial Recruiter. The copy of Imperial Recruiter gets a Dockside Extortionist, then he casts at Dockside, and Kale responds with a Mindbreak Trap. Rodrigo responds by tapping Sensei's Divining Top. After seeing nothing, Mindbreak Trap resolves. Rodrigo moves into end step and exiles Sensei's Divining Top with Prosper. We move on to Dean's turn. Dark Confidant triggers. He reveals a swamp, then recasts his commander Tergrid. Then casts Liliana Vess, moves into combat and attacks Rodrigo. Then passes turn to Kale. Kale does nothing on his turn and then passes to Rodrigo. Rodrigo casts Sensei's Divining Top from exile, which triggers Prosper. He nets a treasure. Then he casts Bolus of Citadel. Kale responds with a mana drain. Rodrigo cracks his Polluted Delta, which triggers Tergrid, and Rodrigo gets a swamp. He moves into combat and attacks Kale with Commander Lethal. On Rodrigo's end step, Dean cracks the Polluted Delta on Rodrigo's end step, which triggers Ob. Rodrigo exiles Unstable Amulet. Then Prosper triggers, and Rodrigo exiles Sulphurous Spring. On Dean's turn, Dark Confidant triggers, and it reveals a Indulgent Tormentor and loses 5. Then casts the Tormentor, and then casts Contamination. Dean attacks Rodrigo, and Rodrigo blocks with the Orcish Bowmaster, and then passes turn back to Rodrigo. On Rodrigo's turn, he casts Lightning Bolt, targeting the Tormentor. Then attacks the last player, Dean, with Obnix-Rogsi with 17 1/1 counters. Good job, Rodrigo. Good job again, Rodrigo, for pulling off that win. I made my win attempt. I unfortunately got stopped, but you pulled it off at the end there. End game summation for me, my perspective, just to make your game a bit more seamless. You had a few cards there exiled, and you had Prosper. He nets you mana, so you cast and lead with Prosper, then you cast the Mana Rocks, netting you more mana. You had the Zero Rock there and a Soul Ring to net you positive. Then maybe you cast the Disciple of the Vault, and then you get more cards into exile, hopefully just chaining off Prosper and Ob there. And if you want to successfully cast a spell, and you only have one person on board that has a way to interact, which was Kale and his Simic deck, attack him out, then that Bolus of Citadel would have been 100% successfully cast, and at that point you would have been able to get your deck in your hand and cast 100 more spells. I could have maybe waited one more turn. I know it was a big threat, and all those creatures were going to come swinging at me, and my board was probably going to get mowed down through that Orcish Bowmaster. It's hard to say. Maybe I could have leaked out one of the counter spells off a Kale, or hope to draw another interaction piece, and then set up my win attempt the following turn. If you enjoyed that first round and want to try your hands at it, we'll have another event happening in 2 or so months, probably mid to late October, around that time. But the next event I'll probably be playing at is the Top Deck Open. I think it has 256 people registered for the event. It's in Columbus, Ohio. I'll be aiming to catalog my endeavors, maybe do a vlog style there and my experiences. For that tournament, what deck would you play, or what deck would you suggest me to play? While you're down there putting a meme deck for me to play, hit that subscribe button and follow, hit the bell for notifications. There is also a Patreon there that you can get your name in lights, like these guys. Now to thank our lovely patrons. Starting off with our tier 2 content consumers, Big Yoda at 7 times, Marcus at 5, Dylan at 4, Troy at 4, and our newest patron, Rodrigo. Next, our tier 3 cardboard cutouts, we have Wong at 9, Matt at 9, Albert at 8, and Joiner at 3. Thank you guys for your support. Now we have full uncut games on our Patreon. Head to patreon.com/cardboardcontent if you want to see these uncut games. Thank you again. See you guys in round 2 for more content.